Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It is our weekly review of the big stories going on in tech. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This week, something about an election? Yeah, we're digging into what President-elect Donald Trump's second term means for the tech industry. Here to discuss is our regular contributor, Paresh Dave. He's a senior writer at Wired. Hey, Paresh.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Same.
Yeah. Getting some sleep, I hope. We're going to kick things off, as we always do, with our Byte of the Week. This is a number that gives us some insight into our top story. Paresh, what number do we need to know this week?
I've got for you $118.6 million, which is sort of the latest amount, according to Open Secrets, that entities and individuals associated with SpaceX donated to President Donald Trump's reelection campaign. So that's mostly money from like Elon Musk orbit. And that makes SpaceX the third largest group after one Trump mega donor and a Kamala Harris PAC in terms of donating to this election. And we know the impact that seems to have had.
Yeah, we will definitely be getting more into the influence of Elon Musk, what he might want for some of that money going forward. My number this week is 13.5. That is apparently the average number of hours per day, Apple tells me, I have spent on my phone this week. And of course, that's because there is only one number that mattered to everyone this week, which is 270. The 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. Donald Trump handily surpassed that Tuesday night. So we want to get into, what his second term could mean for the tech industry in a number of different domains. And honestly, this isn't necessarily the easiest thing to tease out, just kind of looking at history. Trump's ideas and attitudes about tech, of course, don't always easily map neatly onto kind of traditional conservative values, but even onto what he has done and said in the past in regards to tech. So, Paresh, let's start with antitrust. Competitiveness in big tech has obviously been a major focus for the Biden administration. We currently have some big cases still pending, a potential breakup of Google. Let's listen to what Trump said back in October this year, speaking at the Economic Club of Chicago, as to whether he would break up Google.
I do something, but you have to have, look, I give them a lot of credit. They've become such a power. It's such a power, and you got to give them credit for that. How they became a power is, really the discussion. At the same time, it's a very dangerous thing because we want to have great companies. We don't want China to have these companies.
So, Paresh, how are you sort of interpreting what we've heard from Trump around antitrust?
We know he often says one thing and does another, and he also changes his minds on many things. So I guess I'm not sold that he's definitely not going to move forward with trying to push for a breakup of Google. We'll get an indication perhaps later this month when the Department of Justice is expected to lay out exactly what remedy it seeks against Google now that it won the case in court. But we could also get an indication if that filing deadline, if the DOJ asks for an extension into next year after January 20th, when President Trump takes office, that could be an indication that they're going to defer to what he wants. But we have to remember here that these cases against Google, against Meta, against Amazon, they all began back in the Trump administration in many ways. He was the one who really kicked off this aggressive enforcement against big tech companies that President Biden only continued. So that's important to bear in mind.
And one of the big question marks, I think, is the future of Federal Trade Commission Chair Lena Khan, who has been probably in the Biden administration the most visible kind of big tech warrior. What are some of the questions surrounding her future?
I think the big question is whether she wants to stay and serve in a Trump administration, given the headaches that Trump can give to his various officials and people in government. But a lot of her policies are really populist, pro-consumer things that she has tried to push, like the recent click to cancel rules. Those are things that arguably bring, better benefits to consumers, and Trump would want that. But she's also focused on a lot of things like, issues in tech where consumers aren't really paying anything. Google, for example, you're not really paying for anything. And Trump's big thing is trying to bring down prices, right, for consumers, or trying to help them in their wallets. And to the extent that Lena Khan hasn't focused on that, maybe Trump wants someone different.
All right, now on to an essential hardware component for the tech industry, semiconductors. Of course, the vast majority of advanced chips are made by one manufacturer, TSMC in Taiwan. There is a very delicate geopolitical situation happening there with China. The Biden administration passed the CHIPS and Science Act to bring more semiconductor manufacturing back to the US. What do we know about how Trump is thinking about these issues?
Current American policy is investing in subsidies, right? Taking taxpayer money, funneling it to these semiconductor companies, including TSMC, including Samsung, to build factories in the US, to bring production from Taiwan or China or elsewhere here to the US. Trump is saying, that's bad, that's a waste of money, I'm just going to use tariffs. And so it becomes expensive to bring in chips from other companies. Bring in chips from other countries. So that makes companies want to do manufacturing here just naturally. But the problem with that is I don't think Congress is going to go along with that plan. That money from the CHIPS Act that Biden and Congress passed over the past couple of years, they get to funnel that to specific congressional districts, to specific areas. And lawmakers really like to be able to say that they created jobs, that they brought federal money to their district. I don't think they're going to let Trump get in the way of that. It's just going to be very tough.
Although a reporter recently asked House Speaker Mike Johnson about the CHIPS Act, and he said Congress will probably try to repeal it.
Yeah, they could try to take away some money from it, and you're probably going to see a scramble in the next few weeks because a lot of the money that's sort of been committed hasn't been like written down on paper. It's not super ironclad. So you could expect a lot of scrambling in the next few weeks to try to button things up before Trump takes office. So at least, maybe that'll hold up.
All right, now let's talk about social media. Donald Trump has a very complicated history with social media. He has been kicked off and reinstated on several platforms after January 6th. He has taken some contradictory positions on a potential TikTok ban. What should we be watching when it comes to social media regulation in a second Trump administration?
Yeah, I think there's two big things. One is that TikTok could be spared because, he believes that that's sort of, important now. And two, he's talked a lot about Section 230 reform, which is, of course, that part of US law that provides immunity to tech companies or sort of any internet platform for what users post on their services. And Trump has said that Section 230 is horrible for national security, needs to be repealed. It's something Democrats actually agree on, but both sides, the two sides disagree on what exactly tech companies should be held liable for. Trump wants them held liable for anti-conservative bias. Democrats want internet platforms held liable for, hate speech that users post, violent content, non-consensual imagery, very different priorities there. And if Trump, if Republicans are able to control the House, they've already now controlled the Senate heading into next year. Maybe Section 230 reform could be done, but without the House, it seems difficult.
With regards to the TikTok ban, Trump originally, ordered a TikTok ban himself. It was not successful. He has since kind of changed direction on that. But the ban that could happen, I mean, this is a law that was passed by Congress. Things are in motion. Can he actually do anything to stop that should it come about?
No, he needs congressional support, most likely, to repeal that law or make changes to it. But he could still fashion some kind of deal, right? Like the government could reach a deal with TikTok in which maybe ownership gets transferred, something that placates, all parties here.
All right, finally, let's talk about artificial intelligence. This is a fast moving technology with huge uncertainties attached to it. There are implications for jobs, the economy, national security. And if you listen to some AI doomers, maybe the very future of human civilization. We haven't yet seen a whole lot, definitely from the federal government, in the way of regulation for AI, with perhaps the exception of the executive order from Joe Biden, which was basically non binding. Do we have a sense of what Trump's approach might be to AI?
There's an expectation that he will roll back a lot of the pieces of that executive order that you mentioned, and that safety testing for these big AI systems that was supposed to happen here in the US will sort of exclusively be happening in the UK and the EU, and that states will be having to try to fill in the gap to pass AI regulations. We saw the effort in California fail, but we could see more as sort of states try to fill a vacuum created by Trump. But the complexifier here might be Elon Musk, right? He runs an AI company, XAI. I think he understands that he has sort of said this, that there is a role for some AI regulations to set sort of a baseline that all companies have to follow. And I think he also understands that that can be good for business when customers can trust that there are some minimal regulations that everyone is adhering to. So yeah, I'm not sure that Trump, wholesale will whack some of these AI regulations. Will there be more regulations? Probably not. But I think one other thing to keep in mind here is that Trump is expected to do away with a lot of environmental regulations, a lot of, maybe safety procedures and bureaucracy related to like the energy grid. So I think one thing we could see is a building boom in AI data centers, which you talked about earlier this week on your show about like nuclear power data centers. I think Trump could make a lot of those projects that have stalled or have hit obstacles. I think those could suddenly sort of restart, and we could see a boom in development.
All right, a lot of stuff for us to keep an eye on moving forward. Paresh Dave, senior writer at Wired, so good to have you. Thanks for explaining all of it.
Thanks, Megan.
And thanks to all of you for watching Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Daniel Shin produced this episode, and I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This is APM.